Hello bookworms! Today I'm going to be doing a recommendations video for you, and it's going to be all about young adult fantasy series that I think are pretty underrated but are very good, very solid reads. As I mentioned in my September wrap-up video, I really want to start doing more recommendations videos on my channel, and I think I'm aiming to try to maybe do one video per month. In each video, I'm probably going to recommend between 5 and 10-ish books. I just think that this will be a really great way for me to be able to recommend books to you, because I know that a lot of BookTube tends to talk about books that are new and books that are coming out, because those are usually the most pressing things on our TBRs, and also it's just easy to kind of fall into that when everyone's talking about a book and you're like, I want to read that book too. And it just usually happens to be new releases, but there are so many great books that are older books that probably are accessible through libraries. So I just feel like it's good to highlight those books too, because a lot of these are books that I have truly loved, and I think that a lot of you would enjoy them as well. I'm just gonna get started. So the first series that I have to recommend is the His Fair Assassin trilogy by Robin Lefevers. This is an older trilogy that I love. It's one of my favorite fantasy series of all time. The first book is Grave Mercy. The second book is Dark Triumph. And the third book is Mortal Heart. One great thing about this series too is that it's a companion series, so each book in it follows a different main character. They are all interconnected. I wouldn't recommend reading the second one without reading the first one. I would recommend going in order. This series follows assassin nuns, essentially. So each of the girls has pledged themselves to Saint Mortain, who is essentially the god of death, and they carry out his will for him. He gives them signs, and that's how they figure out who their marks are and who they're supposed to get rid of. But one of the most interesting things about this series is it takes place in Brittany in the 15th century. That is a time period and a country that I just had never read anything about, so this was like totally new to me, and I really thought that the politics of it were extremely interesting. There's a ton of court intrigue and just the manipulations that go on for people who are trying to get into power for themselves. It's like crazy. And there's this really young girl who is essentially running Brittany, and pretty much everyone is constantly plotting against her, and these girls, these assassins, are on her side and they're helping her throughout everything that goes on, and it's just so good. If I actually had to pick a favorite book within the series, I would pick the last book, which is very rare because I feel like I usually like second books in a trilogy the most, but I really liked this third one. And I think part of the reason is because we see everything that the first two girls go through in Grave Mercy and in Dark Triumph, and then by the time that we get to Mortal Heart, everything kind of intertwines, and then we really get just like this wonderful friendship, sisterhood thing of assassins going on, and it's like super great. So cannot recommend these enough. This would be my first fantasy series recommendation. My next recommendation is the Keepers Chronicles by Becky Wallace. This is actually a duology, so it's not a trilogy, which is exciting. The first book is The Story Spinner, and the concluding book is The Skylighter. These are actually a Hispanic-inspired fantasy, which is also something that I feel like is really rare within YA, and that is partially why I was so interested in it, because it was really a very unique and different story. So we follow Johanna. She's essentially a bard, but she's called a story spinner. But she's been expelled from her troupe after her father was murdered, and she gets forced into working for this lord who she can't stand. They like don't get along at all. She is just not really certain that her father's death was an accident. And then there are a bunch of other magical people called Keepers who also are very interested in the death of her father and what happened there. And while all of this is going on, there's also like crazy things happening for people who are vying for the throne within this world. There's also a princess that is supposedly dead, but she's been missing for a long time. So there's also a group of people who are searching her out and trying to find out what exactly happened to her. Johanna ends up finding herself kind of involved in all of the things that are going on, and there's a very cute romance, and I just really, really loved these books. Like I said, I feel like they were so unique and so different from any other YA fantasy that I have read, particularly because of the bard element. So highly recommend these books. The next series that I want to talk about is the Girl at Midnight trilogy by Melissa Gray. This is such a fun series, especially for anybody who likes Daughter of Smoke and Bone, because I feel like it had a lot of similarities between the two. Like there's a lot of travel within here. You get to see like such lush descriptions of different locations within the world. It will like definitely make you feel like you've been bit by the travel bug. And it also has such amazing descriptions of food. Like I was so hungry when I was reading this book and I just wanted everything. So the first book is The Girl at Midnight. The second one is The Shadow Hour. And the third one is The Savage Dawn. So these books follow a girl named Echo, and Echo is a runaway and she has kind of made a home for herself living below the streets within New York City. She has this whole underground network of people that she has become close to and was kind of like adopted into. And there is a centuries-long war that has been going on between these two races of people. One of them is kind of like bird people and the other one is kind of like dragon people. And you get multiple perspectives within the series, and what Echo is searching for is the Firebird, because supposedly the Firebird can help mend the rift between these two races of people and potentially get them to live peacefully together. And just the characters in this series are so lovable. They're like just absolutely incredible. I wish that more people would talk about the series because it's seriously so good. I kind of actually want to reread it now. But there's a large majority of the book that takes place in New York City, so that also is something that really like spoke to me. I think that there's something so magical about fantasy that takes place in a setting that we are already familiar with, but maybe aren't privy to this one extra element of things that are going on. Especially in New York, it's so easy to like not realize half the things that are happening in this city. Not that this is real, obviously, but it's fun to imagine. So yeah, this trilogy I truly loved, and I really, like I said, now I kind of really want to reread it. So that might happen. The next series that I'm going to recommend is the Frostblood Saga by Ellie Blake. The first book is Frostblood, the second book is Fireblood, and the third book is Nightblood. So this is definitely the most recently published and most recently read series by me in this list. This is a series that was heavily inspired by Avatar: The Last Airbender. Follows a girl named Ruby who is a Fireblood, and she has been living within the Frost Kingdom for her whole life. Firebloods have been totally overthrown there, and they're like outlawed, cannot exist. The Frostbloods will immediately kill all Firebloods on sight. So Ruby has had to hide her abilities for her entire life, but then very quickly within like the first or second chapter, she's discovered as being a Fireblood, and she ends up going on the run, and she meets this society of people who are kind of scheming against the Frostblood Empire because they don't believe in the way that they have been ruling. Tensions arise. There's a fun romance between a Frostblood and a Fireblood, so we've got kind of a forbidden romance thing going on. In this series, the second book is by far my favorite. I love it so much. I was like totally addicted to it. The series just recently wrapped up in August, but again, this is a series that I feel like I don't hear many people talking about that much. It's so fun and it's such a quick read. It's definitely a very accessible fantasy world, and again, if you've seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, you will see a lot of parallels between both stories. This actually just focuses on two elements though. It focuses on Frostbloods and Firebloods as opposed to having earth and air within there too, which I think was a good choice. But I really like the cast of characters. I really enjoyed the story, and I think that the world building in this series is really what is the standout for me. I will say that the series does have a lot of tropes in it, but I think that the tropes are done very well. I think that they're done in a way where it makes a compelling story. So I definitely recommend checking these out. And finally, the last series that I want to talk about is the Winners Trilogy by Marie Rutkowski. So this is actually a series that was talked about a lot on BookTube, like years ago, probably in the days when I was just like starting my channel, but has since kind of died down. But it really is a very solid trilogy, and I think that it deserves to be read by as many people as possible. So we have the first book, which is The Winner's Curse. Next we have The Winner's Crime. And finally we have The Winner's Kiss. These books focus on two main characters. We have Kestrel, who is the daughter of a general, and she is really someone that does not have any kind of physical ability to fight or anything, but she has such a clever mind, and she's able to really contribute to everything that's going on within this world through her brains, which is a really fun twist for fantasy because usually there's lots of like sword fighting and stuff, and Kestrel is really like moving pieces around a chessboard and strategizing and planning all of her moves way in advance of things that are going on, and that makes for a really interesting story to hear the behind the scenes stuff. And then our other character is Aaron, and Aaron was actually a slave that was purchased by Kestrel. So yes, very controversial beginning, but you'll see how things go as the series progresses. Aaron and Kestrel end up having this like draw to one another, and they form a very compelling relationship. There's definitely a strange power dynamic between them because Kestrel technically owns Aaron, but Aaron is also like, Aaron's a very headstrong kind of person. So when the two of them start interacting, things get very, very interesting. The romance is so good. Trying to think what I can say without spoiling things. In this series, again, the second book, The Winner's Crime, is definitely my favorite of the three. I was like in tears when I was at the end of that book. It was so good. And I feel like this is also a really great series to be able to binge, especially once you finish Winner's Crime. You're like, how am I gonna wait? And I had to wait for a while to get the last one, but worth it. It was such a great read. So those are the 5 young adult underrated fantasy series that I had to recommend for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you will watch future recommendations videos that I do. Please let me know if you're liking these videos. Also, let me know any underrated young adult fantasy series that you have to recommend to me that I might not have read at this point, because I would love to check them out. And that is all that I have for this video, so I will see you guys soon in a new one. Bye!